It's time. It's been 3 long videos by my standards, but it's finally over. This is the last Mughal video, the decline of the Mughal Empire. Let's get started. The first emperor was Jahangir, who was actually pretty boring. He was born in 1569, and as the eldest son of Akbar, he was in line to take the throne. However, because he was impatient and didn't want to wait, he started a revolt in 1599. Whilst Akbar was out on one of his conquests, and on his deathbed, Akbar confirmed Jahangir as emperor. Despite his unsavory ways of coming to power, he was a shockingly good emperor, keeping Akbar's main policies while ruling. Fun fact, Jahangir isn't Jahangir's real name. His real name is Salim, but once he became emperor, he changed it to Jahangir, which roughly translates into World Caesar. And if that isn't the edgiest DeviantArt name I've ever seen, then I don't know what is. Next emperor. The next emperor is Shah Jahan, who is mainly known as the builder of the only thing that Americans know about India. Shah Jahan was born in 1592 as Jahangir's third son. One thing that surprised me when researching this is that Shah Jahan had a remarkably calm childhood. Akbar named him and then took good care of him alongside his Empress Ruqayya Sultan Begum. They took such good care of him that he actually loved them more than his biological parents, which is kinda justified. Akbar and Ruqayya taught him morals and Mughal traditions, which helped shape him into the ruler that he would become. However, when Akbar died, 13-year-old Shah Jahan had to go back to his biological parents. At the ripe age of 15, Shah Jahan was sent to get married to Mumtaz Mahal. However, the wedding was delayed due to astrologers saying that the wedding shouldn't happen until 1612 because otherwise shenanigans that I'm too lazy to write may ensue. In the meantime, Shah Jahan married Kandahari Begum, who was a princess from Persia. He then proceeded to marry another princess and finally married Mumtaz. Over the next few decades, Shah Jahan proceeded to go through the typical Mughal emperor stuff, making peace with the Rajputs, conquering some others, and conquering more land. One semi-important side note is that Shah Jahan had appointed his son Aurangzeb, who was basically just an archetypal Disney villain, as his viceroy, and he began to conquer most of South India. Finally, let's go to the most commonly known thing about Shah Jahan, the construction of the Taj Mahal. As most of you probably know, the Taj Mahal is a massive tomb built for the dead Mumtaz. It is built out of lime mortar and white marble, and is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the world. What's hilarious is that Shah Jahan didn't build one of these mausoleums for any of his other wives. This is because he thought of them more as quote-unquote royal wives, and he didn't truly love them, which is an astounding level of douchery. By the way, the rumor that Shah Jahan cut off the workers of the Taj Mahal's hands is completely false. Britannica, how could you lie to me? And now it's time for the final emperor, the Disney villain himself, Aurangzeb. Just a warning, Aurangzeb's first act was slaughtering all of his brothers, and it gets worse. If Aurangzeb was alive in the modern world and he did this in the US, he would most likely be considered a terrorist. Unless he was American, in which case he would just be a frustrated citizen having a bad day. Aurangzeb is actually misunderstood. He really wasn't that— no, I can't do this. No, he was just as bad as he was represented. Aurangzeb was an absolutely horrendous person. Just to give you the correct picture, imagine the most horrible, conniving, horrendous villain. Aurangzeb is worse than that. However, the fine print of history books tells us that Aurangzeb wasn't discriminatory against Hindus in particular. The word Hindu has a Persian etymology, and was only used in describing the civilization of people living on the banks of the Indus. It was only used to describe a religious group since the British colonial period. Aurangzeb was actually discriminatory against everyone who was a Muslim, which is better? But to be fair, when 95% of your kingdom is made up of Hindus, then it's kinda specialized specifically against one religion. One thing that is shocking is that Aurangzeb is often compared to Babur, both of them being ruthless conquerors, but let's just not mention that so the beginning of my Mughal Empire video looks better, okay? There were 2 different parts of his reigns, the part where he was alright, and the part where he was the most vile person to ever live. First, the first half of his reign. Aurangzeb was always a fearsome conqueror, and therefore was a good ruler on the surface. People feared him, but due to Akbar's laws being still held in place, they weren't scared for their safety. However, this all changed in the second half of his reign. He suddenly abolished those kind rules in favor of discriminatory and downright disgusting policies. He reintroduced the jizya tax, a law that made non-Muslims pay more taxes than Muslims, and he banned all form of religious worship that were not Muslim. This caused severe dissent and angers amongst his citizens. Riots erupted across the north of the empire, spearheaded by his son Akbar. This loosened his hold on the south of the empire and caused him to spread his resources thin and eventually caused his empire to collapse. The Mughal Empire then steadily declined until it finally crumbled to dust under the control of Bahadur Shah. And that was it.